everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Adoptions from the Heart TV. I'm your host, Amanda Aliberti. I am very excited today because we are joined by Cole and Cienna, who placed their daughter for adoption through our agency. So welcome, Cole and Cienna.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. So we get very excited for birth parents, specifically because adoption is not always something that is talked about. And, there's a lot of emotion involved, especially in placing a child for adoption. And not everybody feels brave enough to kind of come on this platform and share their story. But the reason I reached out to these folks is because I was really just kind of shocked at how aware you both are and how much you were sacrificing for your daughter in choosing adoption. So I really just want to thank you for coming on here and know that this story is going to help somebody else who may be struggling and potentially considering adoption. So let's start from the beginning of what made you initially reach out to our agency, how old you guys are, how old your child was at the time that you reached out, a little bit about your situation at that point.
I'm 17 and he's 19. Autumn was 5 months when we had first started talking about the option. Money was tight. We both lived with our parents and it just wasn't, it didn't seem like the future was going to hold the ideal situation that we wanted for her. At around 5.5 months, we made the call, and right after she had become about 6 months, we placed.
What was that like for you, Cole, of why you agreed to kind of reach out to the agency, knowing that you were struggling, but maybe a little hesitant about what would this look like?
I certainly knew that it was going to be really hard to take that step, but I knew that it was what was best for her.
Yeah.
And she would have everything that a child needs, and I love her. So, I had to just accept that we couldn't provide for what she needed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What was your family involvement? What role did they play when you guys were potentially considering adoption?
The biggest involvement we had from family was my dad, because I live at home with my dad and Autumn was primarily at my house.
Mm-hmm.
He grew to love her like no other, and it was definitely very hard for him. He definitely still feels the hurt sometimes because, he raised me from when I was 4 months old, because he's biologically my grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like saying goodbye was very difficult for him.
Yeah. And how about for you, Cole?
My family wasn't as involved as I would have hoped they would be, in all honesty, but they did help with getting us some things, and I did bring her over to the house a couple times, and I would take her off her hands for the night, so to give her a break.
Yeah.
Obviously she's their granddaughter, so they loved her, and unfortunately they chose to not want to be a part of the adoption process. So I hope that in the future maybe they'll change their minds and want to be in a life.
Yeah, I know for you, Cienna, with your grandfather, who I know you refer to as your dad, he participated in some of the initial meetings that we had, and I was really grateful for that, because I remember when you first called me, you were so scared. And you were like, I'm really nervous. Do I have to tell him? I don't know if he should be involved. I don't know how he's going to take this. And through our counseling, you finally came around and you're like, okay, I get it. I really do have to share this news with him. Autumn's been around him for the last 5-6 months. You owe it to him to share that. Talk a little bit about that, because I know there's folks who are considering adoption but really scared of parents or grandparents or other family members that may give them a different opinion.
So when we had called the agency and had our first in-person meeting with you guys, my grandfather was on vacation. He was not home, because we kind of waited for that. We waited because we knew that vacation was coming. So facing that head on with him there felt more difficult than giving it a little. And I thought about calling him when he was gone and telling him, but I knew he'd be home soon. So probably a little less than a week after our in-person visit at the house, he came back and we had a sit-down talk, and it was very rough for him in the beginning, but he woke up the next morning and he gave her a big hug and he said, I know this is what's best for her.
And that takes a lot. I mean, I can't imagine loving on a child for so many months and then being able to support the idea of we want better for her and then letting go.
Yeah.
And even though adoption is not closing the door, he still can have contact, you guys still have visits and whatnot. That's a really big sacrifice that he also had to make in supporting your decision. Cole, I really want to go back to when we first met and some of the things you said, because I will always remember that moment. In all my years of counseling birth parents, I've never had somebody, especially at your age, as a teenager, be so aware and to say the things you said about your daughter. Share with us why you felt adoption was right for Autumn.
First of all, it kind of comes from personal experience. Parents got divorced. My mom had substance abuse issues, and I didn't really have a whole lot when I was growing up. Well, at least not from her, but from other family members. And I kind of like, I had the foresight to see, you know, what it was eventually going to end up like, you know, with us possibly not having a place to live and not having, you know, enough money. And of course we would make sure she ate, but we might not eat, you know. And that was definitely something that it didn't sit right with me. And I wanted her to grow up in a nice neighborhood with friends and be in a nice school and not deal with what I had to deal with.
Yeah.
I wanted better for her.
Yeah. And just to reiterate, Cole and Cienna were parenting her full time for the first 5.5 months of her life and doing a really great job, especially as teenagers. There wasn't any of these outside factors that sometimes people stereotype birth parents to have. You guys were committed in trying to give her the best life you could. You had a stable home and things like that, but you just knew long term this wasn't what you wanted for her or for you two. We spoke a lot about them wanting to move forward in their lives and going back to school, and you know, you had a job lined up and things like that. So I just want to reiterate that point, because people will assume reasons why you choose adoption, and that was not necessarily for you guys.
A lot of the things that I've been told by people who like used to be friends with me or friendly to me, I lost a lot of people after placing Autumn. So did he. We lost a lot of people. And something I've heard a lot, which is a terrible stereotype for teen parents, is that the financial support from the parents' parents is there. But we got gifts, and his father gave us a crib and all those little things, but that help runs out at a point. No matter how much money your parents have, that does not mean that you have money. And I've been told a lot that my dad was helping with the money with her, but he wasn't. He gave me plenty of emotional support, but I was stuck on my own we were stuck on our own trying to figure out how to afford everything. And I was jobless, he was working, but one income isn't enough to do 3 people.
Well, and it's also not just the financial part. You guys spoke heavily about you are around the clock there for Autumn, right? You're the ones who got up in the middle of the night. Your parents were not necessarily providing the physical or emotional support of parenting. So there's other factors that also have to be taken into consideration. And even aside from all of that, the idea of, well, we can make it work, right? You hear that all the time. We can make it work. You can make it work. We'll all pitch in. We'll all help. You can make it work. Maybe you don't want to make it work. Maybe you don't want your child to go through that struggle. And I know for you, Cole, you spoke heavily on that, of like, you guys had been doing it, you could do it, but it's not the struggle and the life that you wanted for her.
Along with the struggle for her, being in that, like, we would get super stressed out, and it wouldn't end up well for us either. So.
Absolutely. Cole, we don't often hear the birth father voice for a variety of reasons. What would you say to men out there who just found out that, you know, their significant other is pregnant, or their significant other has been parenting and he's been co-parenting for 6 months or a year, and maybe she's contemplating adoption, but he's like, no, I'm not placing my baby for adoption. What would you say to that person in terms of like opening up and at least considering?
I would definitely tell them to think about it, and don't think like a month from now, 6 months from now, a year from now. Look 5-10 years down the road. Think like, do I really have the facilities to like have a house in a nice area that's in a good school district? Am I gonna be able to, like, there's so many things when it comes to raising a kid.
Yeah.
It's not just like the emotional support that you need to give them. It's an extremely expensive endeavor, I will say that. You know, most people, before they have kids, they save up for like 20-25 years to make sure they can afford it.
Yeah.
If you're a teenager, unless you got a trust fund, you're probably not going to be able to afford it, and it's a tough pill to swallow. It definitely is. You gotta kind of learn when to throw in the towel.
Yeah.
Because you can keep up that fight, but for how long? Eventually you're just gonna exhaust yourself, and then you won't be there for your child at all.
Yeah.
Emotionally, or maybe not even financially.
Yep.
So
I always say, for expecting and birth parents that are considering adoption or even have just signed off on paperwork, it's a game of your head versus your heart, right?
Yeah.
And it's constantly playing against each other, because your heart is saying, that's my baby, let me go get my baby, this is not right. And then your head is saying all the reasons why you know this may be the right plan. So it's a constant battle. And there's some folks who their hearts went out and they call us and say, listen, we've changed our mind, and I respect that, right? Because this is about you guys and what you want for your child. But the ones who continue to sacrifice, continue to get through all the pain, and it never ends, right? You guys can share that it never ends in terms of you feeling the loss, but you're doing that for your daughter, and there's a difference.
I hope that when she's older, we can talk to her about it, and hopefully she'll, you know, come to the realization that it was what was best for her.
Yeah.
Because I always want to be in her life. I always want her to know who I am, and I always want her to know that I'm always going to be here. And I never went anywhere. Sure, she's in a new family, but we never left her lives. We never left her heart.
Yeah.
So we're always going to be there.
Cienna, what type of adoption do you have today? What does your relationship look like with Autumn and the family you chose?
So it's actually amazing. We get text messages with pictures. It just stopped being every day, but I'd say 2, 3, 4 times a week. We get pictures of her, and we get updates on if she's crawling, if she's walking. She's starting to pull up, and she's gonna be walking really soon. And we get 4 visits a year, FaceTimes every now and then. I just had one on my birthday.
Oh.
So.
And what does that mean for you, Cole, to be able to still participate and know her, and the trust you're building with this family that you placed your daughter with?
It means a lot, and it certainly has been an interesting adjustment.
Yeah.
Because I, you know, have to put my trust in them to do what is right for her, and I do believe that they're doing what's right for her, and it's honestly just an honor to be able to be a part of her life. You know, they could definitely say that they just want to be left alone from us, but they are allowing us to still be in contact with her, and that definitely helps.
Sure.
Because I get to see how she's doing and kind of observe from a distance.
Yeah.
So.
And just to clarify, in terms of you saying what you get in terms of the visits, Cole and Cienna were very specific in what type of open adoption they wanted. So when we met with them, part of the initial counseling was reviewing what type of plan they wanted. So they got to choose what type of families to look at, how many visits per year. They wanted direct contact where they exchanged phone numbers. Not every adoption looks like that, but we only showed them families that matched what they wanted out of this. So I think it's important for folks to realize that, because people will often say like, well, what does future contact look like? And I say, there's a ton of what it can look like. It's really geared towards what you are looking for. So I want people to recognize that. So in terms of like folks who are scared, right? Because Cienna, I really remember that day like it was yesterday. Even though I couldn't see you on the other end of that initial phone call, I could feel you trembling. And I can't imagine what that was like to be brave enough to call. What do you say to those folks who are at home in the same shoes that you were in of, I've been parenting my child, but it's just not working out? Like, how did you have the courage to call?
I'm just gonna say it is terrifying.
Yeah.
It was probably the scariest phone call I ever made.
Yeah.
And I also will not forget how I felt, but I also remember feeling as if, it's this